Do you know what it feels like to be treated as if you were never really wanted? To sit at the edge of a dinner table, watching the people who are supposed to love you the most laugh, eat, and live while pretending you don't exist. That was my life, but my story isn't just about pain. It's about survival and revenge. It's about how my parents let me die once, and how I rose from the ashes of that betrayal stronger than they could ever imagine. And when they finally came back, dragging along the golden child they always adored, my sister, they came not for me, but for my wealth. And that's when I made sure they got exactly what they deserved. But to understand the end, you need to understand the beginning. I was born into a family that looked perfect from the outside. My father was strict, but respected in the community. My mother was graceful, the kind of woman people whispered about in admiration. And then there was my little sister, delicate, adored, the pride of their lives, and me. I was the shadow. From the moment my sister was born, everything shifted. She got the hugs, the smiles, the gentle words. I got silence. Sometimes cold glares, sometimes dismissive remarks. Tea birthdays. My sister had cakes with candles and gifts, wrapped in shiny ribbons. I had a slice of leftover cake, if I was lucky. At school events, they cheered for her, while I scanned the crowd, desperate to find a familiar face, but there was never one for me. It wasn't just favoritism. It was as if they had decided, long ago, that one daughter was worth their love, and the other was just a mistake they had to tolerate. I tried to win them over. God knows I tried. I brought home good grades. I cleaned. I cooked. I did things a child should never have to do, just to earn a crumb of affection. But nothing worked, and then came the day everything shattered. I fell sick. It wasn't just a cold, it was something worse. I remember lying on the bed, my body burning with fever, my chest aching with every breath. I begged my mother to take me to the hospital. She looked at me once, then turned her head toward my sister, who was practicing piano. "You'll be fine," she said flatly, and walked away. My father never even came to check. My sister glanced at me, but she kept playing, as if the sound of her music was more important than the sound of my weak, trembling voice. The fever worsened. I remember calling out, whispering, "Please, I need help." But no one listened. They left me there, left me to die. I don't remember how long I lay unconscious, but I do remember the silence of the house when I woke up again. I was still alive barely, but in that moment, I realized something. I didn't have parents. I didn't have a family. I had people who shared my blood, but not my heart, and sometimes that's even worse than having no one at all. That was the night I buried my need for their love. And that was the night I promised myself, if they could let me die once, I would learn how to live without them. And I did. I survived. But I survived for me, not for them. Because one day I knew fate would turn. And when it did, they'd regret everything. When I finally stood up from that bed, weak and trembling, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't stay in that house much longer. It wasn't just the sickness I was fighting anymore. It was the poison of their indifference. And I refused to let it kill me. I was only a teenager then, but life had already taught me lessons most adults never face. I learned that blood doesn't equal love. That survival sometimes means walking away from the very people who should be protecting you. And that silence, no matter how heavy, was still better than begging for love that would never come. In the weeks that followed, I recovered slowly, mostly on my own. My parents never asked how I was doing. My mother only made passing comments, like, "You look pale. Don't ruin your sister's recital with your coughing." My father didn't even look at me, but there was one person who did notice me. She wasn't family. She was a neighbor, an older woman who often saw me lingering outside the house when I couldn't stand the walls pressing in. Her name was Mrs. Haniff. She was widowed, quiet, the kind of woman people in the neighborhood overlooked. But she had kind eyes, the kind of eyes I had been searching for my whole life. One day, she approached me. "You don't look well," she said softly. I shrugged, not trusting my voice. "Come over for tea sometime," she offered. "You look like you need someone to talk to." And for the first time, someone actually meant it. That small invitation changed everything. Her home was nothing grand, just a modest little house filled with the smell of cardamom tea and fresh bread. But to me, it felt like stepping into another world. A world where warmth existed, where silence wasn't cold, but peaceful. She listened when I spoke, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She asked about my dreams, my fears, my life. And though I never told her the full truth of how my parents treated me, she seemed to understand more than I could put into words. She started tutoring me after school, helping me study, teaching me little things about life that my own mother never bothered to share. "You're brighter than you think," she would say. "Don't let anyone make you believe otherwise." Those words planted seeds in me, seeds I didn't know I needed. I began to study harder, not to earn my parents' approval, but to prove something to myself. Every page of every book felt like a step toward freedom. While my sister basked in the spotlight of attention, I worked quietly in the background. No one saw me. No one applauded. But I was building something they could never take away from me. Knowledge, discipline, and determination. It wasn't easy. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, still aching from the emptiness of not being loved. But slowly, the fire inside me grew stronger than the pain. The turning point came when I won a scholarship. It was for a prestigious academy, one that could open doors far beyond what my family ever dreamed of for me. When the letter came, I remember clutching it to my chest, trembling. This was my ticket out. But when I showed my parents, they barely reacted. My father glanced at it and muttered, "Good. Less expense for us." My mother shrugged. "Just don't embarrass us if you fail." And that was it. No congratulations, no pride, just indifference. But I didn't care anymore. Their words, once sharp enough to wound me, had lost their power because I had already learned the most important lesson of my life. I didn't need them. The day I left for the academy, I packed my small bag and walked out of that house without looking back. My sister smirked at me, as if I was nothing more than a shadow fading away. My parents didn't even bother to come to the gate. But I wasn't leaving in defeat. I was leaving in victory. Because that was the day I chose myself over them. And as the bus drove away, I whispered to myself, "One day they will regret every tear I ever cried." The academy was the first place where I felt like I truly belonged. No. Not because people welcomed me with open arms. I was still the quiet one. Still the girl who carried shadows in her eyes. But here, shadows weren't a weakness. They were armor. I studied harder than anyone else. Every night, while others laughed in dorm rooms or went out exploring, I sat at my desk, poring over books, until my eyes blurred. Not because I had something to prove to them, but because I had everything to prove to myself. And slowly, I began to rise. Teachers noticed my diligence. Some even said, "You're gifted," words I had never heard from my parents in my entire life. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. But life isn't just about grades. It's about the people you meet along the way. One of those people was Professor Rahman. He was older, a man of quiet dignity, who saw potential where others saw nothing. He often stopped me after class. "You have a mind sharper than most. Don't waste it." I didn't understand at first why he cared, but later I realized he recognized something in me. The hunger to rise, to escape, to be more. And he became my mentor. He pushed me, challenged me, believed in me when no one else ever had. And when opportunities came, competitions, projects, research work, he made sure my name was always on the list. But fate always has its own plans. One day, he invited me to his office. I thought it was about a project, but when I entered, I noticed something different. His tone wasn't that of a professor anymore, it was gentler, more personal. "Tell me," he asked, "what is your family like?" For a moment, I froze. No one had ever asked me that question in a way that made me feel safe enough to answer. Honestly, I hesitated, then whispered, "They don't care about me." He studied me quietly, then nodded, as if he had already guessed, and then he said words that would change my entire life. "Sometimes, family isn't the one you're born into. Sometimes it's the one that finds you." I didn't know it then, but he was more than a mentor. He was also wealthy. Not the flashy kind of wealthy, but the kind that came from generations of quiet, careful building. He had no children of his own, no family left to inherit what he had worked for, and in me, he saw not just a student, but a legacy. He never said it outright then, but the way he invested in me, guided me, almost protected me, it was clear. And when he fell ill years later, he revealed the truth. He left everything to me, the businesses, the properties, the fortune, all of it. I remember the day I signed the papers, trembling, unable to believe it was real. Me, the unwanted daughter, the forgotten child, suddenly holding more wealth than my parents could ever imagine. But it wasn't just money. It was freedom. I was no longer the girl begging for scraps of love at a dinner table. I was a woman with power, a woman who had built herself out of ashes, and I promised myself I would use that power wisely. At least until the day my past came knocking on my door again, because fate wasn't done twisting. Not yet. At first, I wanted to believe maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. When my parents and sister showed up after all those years, they wore smiles so sweet they could have fooled anyone. "Darling, we missed you so much. We were worried sick when you left. We thought of you every single day." Their voices dripped with honey, but their eyes told another story. I watched them carefully. The way my father's gaze lingered on the expensive chandelier above the dining table. The way my mother's fingers brushed against the polished wood of the furniture, as if she was already claiming it. The way my sister's eyes darted from one corner of the room to another, measuring, calculating. It wasn't me they were interested in. It was everything I had. I played along, though. I let them stay for dinner. I smiled when my sister giggled and said, "Wow, you've really done well for yourself." I nodded when my mother said, "You must be so lonely here in this big place without family." But deep inside, my stomach turned, because the family they spoke of, the one they claimed to be, had let me die once. And now, they were here to bury me all over again. The mask slipped faster than I expected. On the second day of their visit, my father brought up the first hint. "You know," he said casually over breakfast, "it's not safe for a young woman to handle so much wealth alone. Maybe your mother and I could help manage things for you." My mother added with a smile, "Yes, dear, we could lighten your burden. Families share everything, don't they?" And my sister, oh, she laughed, tossing her hair back. "It would make sense, you know. I mean, you don't even have kids. What's the point of holding all this just for yourself?" Her words sliced sharper than any knife. Not because they were cruel, but because they revealed exactly how little I meant to them. To them, I wasn't a daughter. I wasn't a sister. I was a bank account. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in the grand bedroom, staring at the ceiling, remembering the fever that once burned through me while they walked away, and I realized something. I had been given a second life, one they never expected me to have. And if they thought they could waltz back in and strip it away from me, they had no idea who they were dealing with. The next morning, I smiled at them. I sat at the table, sipping tea as if their words hadn't cut through me the night before. "You're right," I said softly. "Families should share everything." Their eyes lit up. My father straightened in his chair. My mother's lips curved into a triumphant smirk. My sister clapped her hands together, as if the game had already been won. But they didn't know. They didn't know that while they thought I was opening the door for them, I was already building the trap. Because revenge isn't about rage, it's about patience. And I had mastered patience long ago. I let them believe they had won. For weeks I played the perfect daughter. I listened to my father lecture me on responsible management. I nodded politely when my mother suggested redecorating the mansion in her style. I even laughed when my sister twirled around the living room and said, "I can't wait until this is mine one day." They thought I was folding. But really, I was watching, studying every selfish word, every greedy glance, every slip of arrogance that revealed their true hearts. It didn't take long before they got comfortable. Too comfortable. My father started bringing guests into the house, introducing them as future business partners. My mother began dressing in clothes she had bought with my money, parading herself like a queen. And my sister, she was the worst. She started inviting her friends over, giving them tours as if she already owned the place. They were vultures, circling what they believed was a dying carcass. But I wasn't dying. I was sharpening my claws. Behind the scenes, I began my work. I called my lawyers. I called my bankers. I called every advisor, every trusted contact I had built over the years, and quietly, without a single word to my so-called family, I started moving everything. The businesses, the accounts, the properties, all of it. Shifted, hidden, secured under my name in ways they could never touch. Piece by piece, I dismantled the empire they thought they were about to inherit. But I didn't stop there. I wanted them to taste hope first. I wanted them to believe the feast was already on the table before I pulled it away. So I dropped little hints. "I've been thinking of letting you handle some accounts, Father. Maybe you can redecorate the guest rooms. Mother, sis, perhaps I'll even transfer a small property into your name soon." Their eyes gleamed with victory. They strutted around the house like it was already theirs. And all the while I smiled sweetly, hiding the storm I was preparing for them. One night, my sister cornered me in the hallway. "You know," she whispered, her voice dripping with arrogance, "you're lucky we came back. Without us, you'd just be some lonely woman with money and no one to share it with." I stared at her, my heart cold, and replied softly, You're right. I am lucky you came back. She smirked, satisfied, and walked away. But in my mind, I was already picturing the day she would regret those words, because my plan was almost ready. Soon, they would learn the lesson they had tried so hard to teach me all those years ago, that love can't be faked, that family can betray you deeper than strangers ever could, and that when you let someone die once, they don't come back to save you. They come back to destroy you. The day came sooner than even I expected. My parents were impatient. Greed has a way of speeding things up. My father cornered me after dinner one evening, his voice sharp with authority. You've delayed long enough. It's time you handed over the accounts. It's not right for a young woman to bear such heavy responsibilities. My mother chimed in, her tone sickly sweet but her eyes cold. Darling, you know family should trust each other. Hand over the papers. We'll make sure everything is safe. And my sister, she laughed, flipping her hair. Don't drag this out. Just sign things over already. It's what's best for everyone. Everyone. Funny how in their definition of everyone, I was never included. I smiled. I told them I understood. I told them I'd been preparing. And oh, how their faces lit up. For the first time since they arrived, I saw pure joy in their eyes. Not for me, but for the riches they thought were finally theirs. They didn't know that behind my smile, I had already emptied the vault. They didn't know that every property, every business, every cent had already been moved, sold, or transferred into places they couldn't reach. What they were about to inherit was nothing but empty walls. The night before my final move, I walked through the mansion alone. My footsteps echoed through the halls. The paintings, the furniture, the polished marble floors, all of it looked grand, but none of it mattered to me anymore. I remembered lying on a thin mattress as a sick little girl, begging for water, begging for help, begging to be loved. And I remembered their silence. Now the silence was mine, and it was powerful. Early the next morning, before the sun had even risen, I packed a single suitcase. Not with jewelry, not with luxury, just essentials enough for me to disappear. Without a trace, on the grand dining table, I left one thing behind. A letter. It wasn't long. It didn't need to be. It simply said, "You let me die once. This time, I let you live, but only with the emptiness you deserve. Goodbye." When they woke, I was already gone. They stormed through the mansion, searching, shouting my name. But all they found were hollow rooms, hollow accounts, and hollow promises. The wealth they thought they owned had vanished with me. The daughter they thought they could control had slipped through their fingers forever, and I could almost hear their cries echoing behind me as I boarded a plane to a place they would never find. For the first time in my life, I felt free, not because I had money, not because I had power, but because I had finally broken the chains that tied me to them. I wasn't their shadow anymore. I wasn't their burden. I wasn't their victim. I was untouchable. I never looked back. As the plane lifted into the sky, I watched the city fade beneath the clouds, and with it, every trace of the pain that once chained me down. For years, I had carried the weight of their neglect like a stone around my neck. For years, I had asked myself questions that haunted me in the dark. Why wasn't I enough? Why didn't they love me? Why did they let me die when I was just a child desperate for their care? But in that moment, as the clouds swallowed the horizon, the answers didn't matter anymore, because I finally understood something. Their failure to love me was never a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of their emptiness. People think revenge is about destruction, about tearing others down, about making them suffer. But my revenge, it wasn't about that. It was about reclaiming the power they once stripped from me. It was about standing tall where they once tried to bury me. It was about showing them and myself that I was not the forgotten girl they abandoned. I was the woman who rose without them. And I would keep rising, even if they never saw me again. Some nights, I still wonder what they felt when they found my letter. Did my father slam his fist against the table in rage? Did my mother weep, not out of love, but out of greed denied? Did my sister finally understand that mocking me had consequences she could never escape? I'll never know. And the truth is, I don't need to, because I didn't disappear to punish them. I disappeared to save myself. Now, I live quietly, not in a mansion, not flaunting riches, but in a place where peace fills the air, where my laughter isn't an echo swallowed by silence, where I choose the people I call family. I may not have the picture-perfect family others brag about, but I have something better: freedom, dignity, and the strength to never bow to those who betrayed me. If there's one thing my story has taught me, it's this: blood doesn't always mean family. Love does, and sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't hatred, isn't destruction. It's vanishing so completely that those who hurt you can never touch you again. I was the daughter they let die, but I came back as the woman who chose her own life. And in the end, that's the only victory I ever needed, and that was my story. A story of betrayal, survival, and a revenge that wasn't about tearing others down, but about rising above them. I learned that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you can be the ones who wound you the most. And when that happens, you have two choices: stay broken, or rebuild yourself into something stronger. I chose the second, and I will never regret it, because the moment I walked away, I finally understood my freedom, my peace, and my dignity were worth more than any inheritance, any apology, or any fake version of family. If my story touched you, if it made you feel something deep inside, then don't forget to support this channel. Hit the like button so more people can find this story. Leave a comment down below. Tell me, what does family mean to you? And of course, subscribe to this channel for more powerful stories of revenge, resilience, and rebirth. Your support means the world, because every story shared is another reminder that no one is truly alone in their pain or in their victory. Until next time, stay strong, stay true, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply choosing yourself.